A simple act of kindness at a gas station leads to an event no one could have predicted. A black man steps in to help a struggling pregnant woman, and what happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about humanity, prejudice, and the power of compassion. Before we begin, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below so we can see how far this story reaches. Let's begin. Michelle, a pregnant black woman, pulled her old, struggling sit-in car into a small gas station in a quiet town. The car had barely made it, running on gas for miles. She was determined to reach her aunt's house, where she hoped to find safety and rest. Pregnancy had brought its own set of struggles. Her swollen feet ached, and her back throbbed after hours of sitting in the worn seat of her old, beaten-down car. Michelle stopped at a gas station with a sigh of relief. She had barely made it. Dragging herself out of the car, Michelle glanced around. Her eyes fell on a man standing a few pumps away. He was probably in his mid-50s. His crisp white shirt and expensive car were a stark contrast to her own faded clothes and rust-speckled sit-in. The man's attitude was calm, almost serene, but there was something in his eyes that caught her attention. A flicker of warmth, an unexpected kindness. Michelle quickly looked away, embarrassed by the state of her car and her appearance. She brushed her hands over her frayed maternity jeans, as if to smooth away the invisible judgment she feared he might hold. But as she turned her focus back to the gas pump, fumbling in her bag for her wallet, she felt a presence beside her. The man had approached her. She froze for a moment, clutching her bag tightly, unsure of his intentions. "Need any help?" His voice was gentle, carrying no trace of condescension or impatience. Michelle blinked, caught off guard. Help? It wasn't a word she heard often these days. She had become used to struggling alone. She glanced up at him, her guarded expression softening slightly when she saw his earnest face. She hesitated, unsure how to respond. The man didn't wait for an answer. His gaze dropped to her car, then back to her, and he gave a small nod, as if making a decision. "Don't worry," he said. "Let me take care of it." Before Michelle could protest, he stepped closer, reaching for her gas cap with practiced ease. He grabbed the nozzle, inserted it, and began filling up her car as though it was the most natural thing in the world. Michelle stood there, stunned, clutching her bag. A mix of gratitude and embarrassment surged through her. She opened her mouth to speak but found the words stuck in her throat. Finally, she managed to say, "You really don't have to do this. I can manage." The man chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It's no trouble at all. Everyone needs a little help now and then." Michelle bit her lip. Her heart swelled with emotion as she watched him finish pumping the gas. No one had shown her kindness like this in a long time, not since her life had taken such a difficult turn. When the pump clicked off, the man replaced the nozzle and gently closed her gas cap. He stepped back, brushing his hands together as if to dust them off, and gave her a warm smile. "All set. You're good to go." Michelle took a deep breath, finally finding the courage to look him in the eye. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't even know how to repay you." The man waved a hand dismissively. "There's nothing to repay. Just pay it forward someday when you can." As he started walking back to his car, Michelle called out, "Wait. At least tell me your name." He paused, turning to look at her over his shoulder. "Anderson," he said simply with a friendly nod, before getting into his car. Michelle stood there, watching as he started the engine and pulled out of the station. The sleek vehicle glided away effortlessly, leaving her standing by her old sit-in with her heart full of emotions she couldn't quite name. She climbed back into her car, her fingers trembling slightly as they gripped the steering wheel. It wasn't just the act of kindness that had moved her. It was the way he had done it so effortlessly, without expecting anything in return. She felt seen in a way she hadn't in a long time. As she glanced at her rearview mirror to watch him disappear into the distance, something caught her eye. A small, elegant business card was tucked under her windshield wiper. She got out, curiosity prickling at her, and retrieved it. Anderson Enterprises, it read, followed by a phone number and a sleek logo. Michelle's heart raced. Who was this man? Why had he helped her? She didn't know the answers, but as she sat back in her car, her grip on the card tightened. Something told her that this encounter was more than just a random act of kindness. It felt like the start of something much bigger. Michelle had always felt like the world was against her, pregnant and alone. Every day seemed to test her limits. The father of her child had walked out the moment she told him she was expecting, leaving her to face the challenges of motherhood on her own. Her family lived hundreds of miles away, and their support was distant, more words than actions. Michelle had grown used to surviving on her own, even though the weight of it often felt unbearable. She told herself she didn't need anyone. Asking for help felt like admitting defeat, and she had no intention of doing that. Not to anyone, especially not a stranger. She turned the key in the ignition. As she pulled out of the gas station, the road ahead seemed just a little less daunting. A stranger's kindness had left its mark on her heart, and though she couldn't explain why, she felt a little stronger, a little more ready to face whatever came next. Weeks passed, and life returned to its usual rhythm of chaos and challenges for Michelle. Between doctor's appointments, preparing for her baby, and trying to stretch her savings, she barely had time to think about anything else. Yet, no matter how busy her days became, she couldn't shake the memory of the man at the gas station. His kindness had been so unexpected, so genuine, that it lingered in her mind like a puzzle she couldn't solve. Why did he help me? The question played on repeat in her thoughts, sometimes comforting her, other times leaving her bewildered. In a world that had shown her so much hardship, his gesture felt almost too good to be true. One afternoon, as Michelle was leaving her clinic after attending a free prenatal class, she noticed a group of people gathered in a corner. They were engaged in animated conversation, their laughter and smiles filling the air. Michelle's eyes scanned the group, and her heart skipped a beat. There he was, the man from the gas station. He was sitting casually, leaning forward as he spoke, his white shirt crisp as ever, his appearance warm and approachable. She froze in her tracks, her mind racing. What was he doing here? Should she approach him? Her feet seemed to move on their own. Before she knew it, she was standing a few feet away, her voice escaping her lips almost involuntarily. "Hi," she said, her tone hesitant but clear. The man turned to her, his face lighting up with recognition. "Well, hello," he said, standing up. "I remember you. How are you doing?" Michelle's cheeks flushed. "I'm good," she said, her hands instinctively resting on her growing belly. "I don't know if you realize how much that day meant to me. You helped me when I really needed it." He smiled warmly, gesturing for her to sit. "Of course I remember. It was no trouble at all. I'm just glad you're doing well." As they talked, their conversation started light. Michelle learned that he had been involved in various community projects for years. But the more they spoke, the more Michelle began to realize that Mr. Anderson wasn't just a kind stranger. He was the CEO of a prominent local company, a business known for its charitable work and support for single mothers. Michelle's curiosity grew, but before she could ask more, Mr. Anderson leaned in slightly, his tone shifting to something more thoughtful. "You know," he began, "I've actually been hoping to run into you again." Michelle blinked, caught off guard. "You were looking for me?" He nodded. "That day at the gas station, I had this strong feeling, call it intuition, that I was meant to do more. I wanted to find you, to see if there was any way I could help." Michelle's heart raced. She wasn't sure where this was going, but she couldn't deny the sincerity in his voice. "Help how?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Well," Mr. Anderson said, leaning back slightly, "I know you mentioned you were on your way to see family. But I also got the sense that you might be looking for something more stable, a fresh start, maybe. I have an opening at my company that I think could be a good fit for you. It's not just a job, It comes with childcare benefits and flexible hours. I thought maybe it could be something that would make things a little easier for you and your baby." Michelle stared at him, her mind reeling. Was this really happening? Just weeks ago, she had been struggling to even put gas in her car. And now, this stranger, this kind, compassionate man, was offering her a lifeline. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "No one's ever done something like this for me before." Mr. Anderson reached out, his hand resting gently on the table between them. "You don't have to say anything right now. Just think about it. And whatever you decide, know that you're not alone. Sometimes, life has a funny way of putting people in our path for a reason." Michelle felt a sense of hope she hadn't experienced in a long time. The kindness of one man, a simple gesture at a gas station, had turned into something far greater, a chance to rebuild her life and create a better future for her child. When Michelle left the clinic, she couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in what felt like forever, the road ahead seemed full of possibility. She glanced down at her belly, her hand resting protectively over her child. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, and this time, she truly believed it. Michelle's life took a dramatic turn after that fateful encounter at the gas station. What started as a random act of kindness from Mr. Anderson quickly blossomed into an opportunity for transformation, one she never imagined possible. For years, she had struggled with feelings of abandonment and fear, yet in that single moment, it felt as though the universe had finally offered her a lifeline. With Mr. Anderson's help, Michelle was able to secure a stable job at his company. It wasn't just any job, it was a position tailored to her strengths and needs. The hours were flexible, allowing her to attend prenatal appointments and prepare for her baby, and the company even provided childcare benefits. It was more than a job. It was a step toward independence and security. "I see potential in you," he told her one day during a mentoring session. "You've faced challenges that would break most people, yet here you are, still fighting. That kind of strength is rare, Michelle. Don't let anyone, including yourself, underestimate it." His words struck a chord deep within her. For years, Michelle had felt invisible, like her worth was tied to her hardships. But Mr. Anderson saw something more in her, a resilience and determination that she hadn't acknowledged in herself. Slowly but surely, her confidence began to grow. As the months passed, their relationship deepened. Mr. Anderson became more than just a boss or benefactor. He became a mentor and a guiding presence in her life. He shared stories of his own struggles and triumphs, revealing a humble and compassionate side that Michelle hadn't expected from someone so successful. "I wasn't always in this position," he admitted one day. "There were times when I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. Someone helped me when I needed it most, and I've never forgotten that. Now it's my turn to pay it forward." Michelle listened intently, inspired by his journey. It reminded her that even the darkest moments could lead to brighter days. His support wasn't just about the financial stability he provided. It was about the hope he instilled in her, a belief that she could create a better future for herself and her child. Michelle began to thrive at work, earning respect from her colleagues and proving to herself that she was capable of so much more than she had thought. But it wasn't just her professional life that was changing. Her personal life was transforming as well. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged. She no longer felt like she was battling the world alone. Mr. Anderson became a regular presence in her life, checking in on her progress and offering guidance whenever she needed it. He encouraged her to dream bigger, to think about what she wanted for her future and her child's. Michelle found herself envisioning a life she had once thought impossible, a life of stability, happiness, and purpose. One evening, as Michelle sat in her small but cozy apartment, she reflected on how much had changed since that day at the gas station. Her baby's nursery was nearly complete, filled with items she had been able to afford thanks to her new job. Her fridge was stocked, her bills were paid, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. The moment felt almost surreal, like a scene from a movie. But Michelle knew it was real, and she knew she had been given a gift. Not just the tangible support from Mr. Anderson, but the intangible blessing of hope. Months later, when her baby was born, Mr. Anderson was among the first to visit. He held the tiny infant with the same gentle kindness he had shown from the start, and Michelle couldn't help but feel that the universe had played a role in their meeting. "I guess you were right," Michelle said, her voice filled with emotion. "Sometimes life really does put people in your path for a reason." He smiled, nodding. "It's not just life. It's those moments of grace, those God winks, that remind us we're never truly alone." Michelle's journey was far from over, but she was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. She had learned that even in the darkest times, there was light to be found. And with her baby in her arms and a newfound sense of purpose in her heart, she was ready to embrace whatever came next. We'd love for you to subscribe, share, and like our channel. Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. We're always excited to hear from our amazing community around the world. Also, feel free to share if you've had a God-wink moment recently. A special, meaningful sign that felt like a little nudge from above. Your stories inspire us, and we can't wait to hear them.